Hello everyone and welcome back to another sweltering hot day in Havana, Cuba. So I've been here for about a week now, so I thought it'd be a good time to do a bit of a tips and advice video, particularly for those of you that are coming to Havana for the first time, or indeed Cuba as a whole. I'd just like to clarify before I get started that many of these points in this video are aimed at budget backpackers or long-term travellers, not so much holiday makers going to a resort, all-inclusive, that kind of thing. However, saying that, a lot of these points do apply to everyone. So on that note, let's get going. And if you've seen some of my Havana videos, you'll notice that I've had a bit of a roller coaster over the last 7 days. Sometimes it's been a bit frustrating, it's been a bit rocky, it's been a bit emotional, but I think when you get over that and when you embrace the differences in Cuba, then you'll find that Havana is one of the most amazing places you could ever visit. So point number one is about your arrival when you get to the airport in Havana. Now, pretty much the only way that I found of getting into Havana City is by getting a taxi. When you walk out of the airport, you will see a lot of buses, but generally these are like tour buses or taking people to other areas of Cuba. There's no actual tourist bus that goes into Havana. I may be completely wrong, but everyone I've spoken to has had to get a taxi. So on the subject of taxis, when you walk out of the airport, so I'll tell you my story. I walked over the road, there's like a food place. One guy said to me, oh, it costs 25 CUC or Cuban Convertible Peso, more on currencies in the next point. However, I went back to get the taxi, it turned out that it was 30, and obviously it will depend on where you're going in Havana, potentially. And, you know, some people I know have been charged 25, some have been 30, some have been 40, so it very much depends. Obviously, the thing overall that you have to be aware of, and this is going to be obvious, you know, you need to confirm the price with the taxi driver before you get in to avoid getting scammed. Point number two is about currency, or should I say, currencies. Yes, you've heard it right, there are two currencies in Cuba, similar to Cambodia. If you've been there, it works quite similar. So the first one, which goes by many names, is the CUC, the Cook, the Cuban Convertible Peso, or the tourist currency. There's probably other names, and I will show you. One moment. Here are 5 pesos in the Cuban Convertible Peso. Okay, and the way you identify this compared to the other one is that they have buildings on, or monuments, if you like. Okay, and I'll show you the other one in a moment. So the best way to think about the Cuban Convertible Peso is just think of it as US dollars, because the exchange rate is exactly the same. So it's probably easier, especially if you're from America, maybe just think of it as the US dollar. It's quite simple. And generally you'll use this one for most of your purchases. Tourists are kind of expected to use this currency. So if you're paying for a tour or paying for a hotel or paying for something in a supermarket, generally you'll pay in the CUC, Cuban Convertible Peso. The problem with this is that because it is in effectively US dollars, everything will be in, say, US prices. Okay, so I'll give you an example, which I'll come back to in a minute. Cigarettes, okay, these are a local brand. Sometimes when you go to a shop, you may be charged in CUC, which will be about 4 to 5 pesos, which is a ridiculous price, to be honest with you. On to the second currency, which is the CUP, the CUP, or the Cuban Peso, or the national currency, or the local currency. See what I mean about lots of different names? And I'll show you one here. So as I said, the previous one, you can identify that with buildings or monuments. These ones all have people on them, okay? They do look quite similar, but just identify it with the people on the monuments, okay? And you know what? This currency is like a godsend. It's like potluck. It's like winning the lottery. It's like the jackpot. All those words, okay? Because it's what the locals use basically to pay for things like for local food in local shops, things like that, drinks on the street, that kind of stuff. And in terms of value for money, the CUP the difference is astronomical. So back to the cigarettes. So generally this would be about 5 times less the price if I paid in these, roughly, okay? So potentially, just using that as an example, you could save a huge amount of money if you use the CUP. So how do you get hold of it? And many people often say that it's frowned upon if tourists use the CUP, and yeah, sometimes it is. In terms of getting it, there are some places where you can exchange your CUC into CUP, okay, but they are few and far between. I have not been able to find one. So how did I get them? So generally when I go to somewhere to get something to eat, for example, there's a place opposite the Capitol building, which I showed you in another video, that is, we can get a burger for 8 Cuban pesos, the local currency, which is pretty much 30 cents in US. okay? And generally, if you pay in CUC at one of those sorts of places, normally, okay, 70% of the time, like I said, it's potluck. You will get change in CUP, and it's like winning the lottery. So once, the other day, I got a 50 peso note in change, and I felt like all my Christmases had come at once, but then I bought something else and I got change back in CUC. Brilliant. And just in terms of the coins, the silver ones are CUC, the gold type ones, which I think are a bit older, are the local currency. Okay, you just have to try your luck with currencies. If your Spanish is particularly good, sometimes you'll get away with it. And you know, for example, I've been to one place to buy something one day, they've been fine giving me the change and accepting money in CUP. The next day I went back, it was a different person that served me, they refused, point blank. Okay, so there is no hard and fast rule in terms of currencies, you just have to wing it, basically. Okay, on to the next point, number 3, which is about Wi-Fi. You may have heard that there is no Wi-Fi in Cuba, but that is incorrect because there is Wi-Fi in Cuba. At the time of filming, which is June 2018, many hostels, many hotels do have their own free Wi-Fi, okay? But generally, 90% of the time you will have to pay for it. So you can get a card, which I'm going to put a picture of one up on the screen. There are places where you can actually buy them at different durations, like 1 hour, 5 hours, that kind of thing. But to be honest with you, again, these are few and far between. In my experience, it's been difficult to find one. So how do you get one? Okay, so, and this might sound a bit dodgy. You go to basically a Wi-Fi hotspot area. That's the best way I can use to describe it. It might be like a park or something, or a hotel. And I'm going to put a couple of locations down the bottom where you can use Wi-Fi, where you can get a Wi-Fi card, things like that. And basically there will be locals there, usually young guys or young women, who are selling Wi-Fi cards. And I'll say in English, Wi-Fi card, amigo, that kind of thing. The only thing is with these is that you will pay double. So they only do like the 1 hour one, and you'll pay 2 pesos for that. So yeah, you might say it's a bit of a rip-off, but end of the day, it's not the end of the world, and it allows you to get on the internet. However, just because you're in a Wi-Fi hotspot area doesn't mean that the Wi-Fi is going to work. It will be intermittent at best. The place that I put down at the bottom of the screen before, the hotel by the sea, it's a big blue tall building. The Wi-Fi works fantastically. They also have actual computers in there which you can put your code into to use the Wi-Fi there, and it works an absolute treat. Obviously, you know, the mistake I made was that I didn't plan things for my future travels before I came to Cuba. I was expecting to be able to do it with the Wi-Fi. I didn't expect it to be so intermittent. So try and plan before you get to Havana. Point number 4 is about Jinateros. Okay, it's locals basically. And to be honest with you, I haven't had a huge problem with this. There has been a couple of instances where basically, particularly if you're in a tourist area like Capitol Building or Old Havana or something like that in a plaza, locals may come up to you and spark up a conversation. Oh, where are you from? That kind of thing. And you can tell what they're doing. They'll start to tell you information about the area or try and give you advice about places to go, that sort of thing. Basically, they're just doing it because they want to charge you. They want to get money out of you for it. And I've had a couple of instances where I've sensed this has started to happen, but I just politely say, no, sorry, I need to go, or something like that. And I get away from them. And you know, I understand why they're doing it. End of that day, they need to make money somehow. But as a tourist, it's just not what you want. It can give you a negative experience, I guess, of Cuban people. And actually, on the whole, Cuban people are absolutely amazing. Don't get me wrong, they're absolutely fantastic. Like I said, I've had very minimal issues with those sorts of people. And the last point number 5, I'm going to lump 4 things together: food, water, restaurants, and tipping. So firstly, with food and water, in terms of convenience stores, anything that you might expect about things like 7-Elevens or Family Mart, things like that, there are none, okay, for obvious reasons. You know, American chains, they wouldn't be operating in Cuba, okay? So in terms of getting your basics like food and water, it can be a struggle. At least I found it to be like that. So, you know, sometimes you might have to walk quite a while to find someone that actually sells water, and most of the time they will only sell like Coke or Orangeade or something like that. You do very much have to shop at local places, but actually this is a good thing in my opinion, because it means that you can use or get the CUP as change, meaning you can save money that way. In terms of supermarkets, there are some supermarkets, but I would more call them like slightly larger mini marts, if you know what I mean. The range isn't fantastic. The other thing about these places is that all the prices will be in CUC and also CUP, but in terms of value for money, they're very much I guess, Western prices, if you know what I mean. So you wouldn't be able to get, you know, something for a ridiculous bargain in a supermarket. Another thing about supermarkets is that, and again you would expect this, is that convenience is just not a thing in Cuba. So you wouldn't find a shop where you can buy your health and beauty products, your fruit and veg, your wine, etc. like that in one place. Generally you have to go to all sorts of different places. For example, your health and beauty stuff like shampoo, some supermarkets or places will have a separate section where everything is behind glass cabinets, things like that. You'll find shops which are specifically for health and beauty products, things like that. So, you know, it does take a bit of getting used to, especially if you're used to convenience, that kind of thing. And on to restaurants and tipping. So especially if you are eating out a lot, which realistically you probably are, considering there isn't many options in terms of cooking for yourself if you're a budget backpacker, that sort of thing. Restaurants are a bit hit and miss. In terms of authentic Cuban food, I've not really seen many places in the area that I'm staying. Probably in more tourist areas there are. Generally for proper Cuban food, I found like local places on the street, little small places, you just put your head in and say, can I have this, can I have that? But the restaurants that I've eaten in, and I'm going to put one down the bottom, which is very close to where I'm staying, it was awesome. So, but the thing is, you'll have things like pizzas, lasagna, that kind of stuff, but in terms of quality it was fantastic. And in terms of tipping in restaurants and places like that, it can be a bit, sometimes you think, should I tip, should I not? And actually some places do specifically say that the service charge 10% is included in the total price of the meal, but to be honest, most places that's not the case, so you do have to remember to give your 10% tip when you pay. Okay, so those have been my 5 tips based on my experience of my 7 days in Havana. I hope you have found these useful. If you do have any questions or anything like that, you can write them in the comments below, message me on Instagram, whatever you like, and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and if you'd like to see more from Cuba, I'm going to link the playlist to my Cuba videos both up above on a card and also in the description below, so you can check out a couple of videos, one from Old Havana, one from New Havana, and a couple of videos about my experience, if you like, in Havana. Thanks for watching. If you're coming to Havana, I hope you have an awesome time. I certainly have. I'm not exaggerating when I say Havana is one of the best places I've been to. You'll have a great time if you come there. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later.